Hey friends, I'm Vicky. Welcome to this Jersey Girls home. I need to plan how many plants to start from seed. And if you were like me, you want to grow it all and you just can't do that. You're wasting time, money, and resources if you don't start or buy the right amount of plants for your garden. If you buy 10 tomato plants and you only have room to grow 4, well, that's not fun, is it? If you want to make a batch of homegrown tomato sauce and you plant more peppers and not enough tomatoes, then, well, that's not fun either. That means you're not getting homegrown pasta sauce or tomato sauce. If you buy too many of one plant and not enough of the other, you're not going to get what you're expecting out of it. So let's make a plan. Watch step by step how I make my food garden as efficient as possible. The very first thing I love to do is make a garden map. And it's just a rough draft. It's something to inspire you and give you a layout for what you plan to use your garden for. Now, I kind of had an idea, like I wanted room for beans, I wanted room for potatoes and tomatoes, peppers. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get all the things that I wanted and needed on these 2 garden maps. I thought that I had a good layout until I did the next few steps. So again, this is a great way to start. It gives you your inspiration, it gives you ideas. And because every garden year is different and we have different wants and needs, that is something you have to think about. Are you just fresh eating or are you also preserving? What are you going to be willing to give up? What are you not going to be willing to give up? I like to move around, edit, have fun with my garden. I mean, it's a hobby as well as a source of food. Since I intend to grow my garden to feed my family, preserving is a really important step for me. And so that brings me to step number 2, your preservation needs. If you are not preserving, you can just skip right over to step number 3. But if you want to save any food from your garden, then step number 2 is a great way to plan that. Okay, so the first thing I started with was inventorying all the stuff that we did go through really fast and I need to replenish. There were new recipes that we tried. And so I'm writing down the ones that I want to make big batches of. I know pasta sauce is something that I really want to make. If I don't buy pasta sauce from the store, that makes me super happy. And this past year, we have succeeded so far. We are getting low, so I'm hoping that we are going to make it to tomato season. So we might have to ration that out a little bit till I know for sure that we make it. I'm also looking at my condiments, broths, seasonings, vegetables, fruits, whatever else I feel that we need. I think we are well off on jams and jellies, so I am definitely not going to worry about that this year. But these are just the canned items that I preserve. You can also freeze dry, dehydrate, or just freeze in your freezer. I did a lot of basil pesto in our freezer, and we have actually eaten through it all. We made our last pesto tortellini last week, I think it was. And so I know I need a lot more basil. I ended up trying to prioritize making basil pesto before I turned to dehydrating basil, and I did not end up with enough regular basil dried to do the spice mixes that I wanted with it. So I did end up having to buy basil this year. So that is something I want to make sure I have enough of. I grew a bunch of varieties of basil, but I just want to grow sweet basil this year. So that tells me right there that, okay, I like the lime basil, I like the lemon basil, but I have so much preserved of it and not enough preserved of sweet basil that has to be my target this year. Part of my goals is to preserve enough food to keep it off my grocery list. So I do this and then I go through all my canning books. I have a dehydrating book and a freezing preservation book. And I go through those and I make lists of the stuff I want to try. So now I've gone through my actual food storage and made lists of what we will need And then I go through the books and see what recipes I want to make. And I kind of make notes of whatever item needs to be grown that takes up the most part of that recipe. For example, I know with pasta sauce, I am going to need a hefty amount of tomatoes for each one of those. I also know that it contains onions, celery, carrots, garlic. I wanted to try pizza sauce. I want to try a new ketchup recipe that hopefully my kids would like. Really liked the beans and tomato sauce that I canned. So these are all things that take a lot of tomatoes. And so I know that I need a lot of tomatoes, but I still don't know how many tomatoes I need, which leads me to step number 3. Here's our rough draft so far of our garden planning for the 2025 season. Step 3 will test your math skills, but don't fear because I made a growing chart and a garden canning worksheet to help you. On the growing chart, I listed a bunch of different annual crops, and then for each crop, I wrote a suggested plants per minimum based on averages and my experience about how much yield you get per plant, the amount of growing space that plant is going to need, and the pounds of the vegetable that each quart jar will need. Now you need to look back at the lists of items you wanted to preserve and the amount of food that you wanted to be able to eat during the growing season. Let's see how the garden canning worksheet is used, and then I can show you an example of how to use them. We need to know how many pounds of our produce do we need in every quart jar, how many quarts we want, and the pounds needed to make that number of quarts, right? So then we move that number down here. Oh, and I did a multiplication. It needs to be a division number. This is division. Okay. Pounds needed, and then we're going to divide by how many pounds each plant produces so that we then get our final number of how many plants we need. And we're going to work on pasta sauce. This equation is going to be for pasta sauce. To get a thick pasta sauce that is preferred by all in my household, and I don't always make it thick, depends on how much patience I have when I'm actually canning. So per quart jar, you need about 6.5 pounds. That's the math I used for last year, and that did work out good. So you need about 6.5 pounds of tomatoes per quart jar times the number of quarts wanted. Minimum, we need 52 jars of sauce. But I want to go up from there because that is what I did this last year, and we are really going to just hit that mark of being okay. With the hopes that we have a good growing season, I do want to grow more, and I also want to add more into this because I also wanted to make ketchup and pizza sauce, which also takes up quite a bit of sauce. If I have 52 jars, and that seems like a lot, but when you're looking at a whole year's span, that's only 1 jar per week. I want to look at having 2 jars per week, so that's 104 jars. So that is 676 pounds of tomatoes needed. That is a lot of tomatoes. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but let's just calculate it out and see what it says. We need to bring down our 676 to here, and we're going to divide that by pounds each plant produces. And a tomato plant is going to go between 10 to 15 pounds is what I normally find it for my area. So I always go with the lowest because plan for the worst and hope for the best. 676 pounds of tomatoes needed, and then pounds each plant make 10. That means I need 67.6 plants or 68 plants. Now that's just for my preserving needs. So depending on how many people are in your household and how much you go through something will be how you use this map. Okay, on to step number 4, and you're still going to want to refer to your growing chart for this part, because this part is about your space. So now when you look at your rough draft map, you want to decide if you're going to have enough room to grow what you thought you did, or if you need to change your layouts. And well, that's what happened to me. So after going through my chart and comparing growing spaces, number of plants, what quantities I wanted for recipes, I knew I needed to make changes. So I went out into the garden on a cold, cold day. It was very, very cold, and laid out some row covers or weed fabric, whatever you want to call them. I laid them out to get a visual idea of how I could change things in the garden so that my garden could fit my growing needs for this year. Doing this led me to a new layout that is going to work fantastically. And now the garden you can see me working on is going to be called my tomato garden because it's going to grow mostly tomatoes, bell peppers, snacking peppers, my eggplants, potatoes, roots, and herbs. My other garden by the pool that I called the pool garden will now be called my Three Sisters garden because that will include my beans, corn, melons, cucumbers, my loofah plants, green beans, and squashes. Okay, so for step 4, you want to calculate your plant's growing space and make those appropriate changes or sacrifices to your garden. Last but not least, probably the second most exciting part is step 5, and that is to pick out which varieties you're going to grow. Now you know how many plants to grow, you know where you're putting them. Now finalize which tomatoes you're planting, which peppers you're planting, which beans are you planting. Normally, I do not grow a ton of potatoes, and this year, something that I wanted to up was my potatoes, and I also wanted to grow a lot more beans, not just green beans. So after trying to organize my garden to fit all the tomatoes, the peppers, all the plants that we love during the summer, had to reorganize my garden maps because it just wasn't going to work having everything laid out the way that I did and being able to grow the extent of other options. Oh, and then so I've had to do some major cutbacks on my variety selections. I think I'm growing like 20-acre farm. It's not happening. Too much. So help me decide what varieties to grow. Prioritizing, there's always another year. This year we grow this, another year we grow that. I'm starting to make progress here. We're getting my list created. I have my tomatoes picked out. I have my potatoes, eggplants, and peppers picked out. I did decide I'm going to have to use my back garden more than I anticipated because I have high expectations. Maybe eventually I can rein it in more, but this is not that year. This garden is fully planned out. I have pole tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, and more reds, bush tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplant, and then these little boxes down here are 4x4 raised beds, and this is where I have enough to fit these 7, and then on this side of it I can fit my compost bin, and then have a couple boxes of herbs, greens, carrots, and beets. And then I have 5 blueberry plants in there. So the tomato garden. Hallelujah. After I was able to reconfigure to make things lay out a little better and get more bang for my buck, I then decided on my varieties. So what I did was pull tomato trellis. I wrote down the length of the trellis and then listed what could fit in there. Now, excuse this because it's only these that can fit on that one. I have 6 of each: bread and salt, Rocky, Hungarian Heart, Upstate Ox Heart, and Rutgers. Now, I really do always end up planting as close as I can make it happen. I would call it intensive planting. You have to make sure that your soil is very good and very nutrient dense, or else you're just not going to have enough nutrients to fulfill the needs of these plants. Now, they're going to get pruned as they grow and staked up to my trellis so that they're not on the ground at all. And I've had success with growing every foot. So a lot of things say 18 inches minimum. I've been able to grow every 12 inches successfully with no issues. This year I was going to try to do every 18 inches, but it's just not going to happen with what I want to grow. This was the best I could make it. So I got my paste tomatoes chosen, and I picked 4 of those. And then I picked 4 red tomatoes, which are Rutgers, Brandywine Red, Queen of Hearts, and Boxcar Willie. Brandywine Red, I have never gotten the seeds for before, so I'm really excited to try growing those. Usually I can only find the Brandywine Pinks, but I've grown Brandywine Reds when I used to get them from the nursery. Boxcar Willie is a new one that I have not grown, as well as Rocky and Bread and Salt. So 3 of those are new. The other 5 are ones that I know are successful and work great in my garden. Then I have my cherry tomato trellis, which I'm only growing 2 of each plant. There are quite a bit of varieties, but I don't grow a lot because cherry tomatoes produce a lot of tomato food. So if I were to grow too much of this, then I would be wasting a lot of it because there'd be no way to keep up with it. My red non-paste tomatoes are going to go on the trellis with my cherry tomatoes, because those I'm going to grow less than I'm going to grow of my paste tomatoes. That'll work out great. So then I have my honeycomb, which is an orange, a white cherry, which is a yellow. And those are my 2 favorite ones in those colors. They're the ones that year after year, those are the ones that I like the most. Magic Bullet I grew last year. It was absolutely delicious. I love it. I'm also going to try Lucky Tiger this year because it looks similar to the Magic Bullet, so why not give it a try? Magic Bullet and Lucky Tiger are kind of a green tie-dye like tomato. I did get Brad's Atomic Grape ones, but being I was pressed for space, I decided to go with the Lucky Tiger. Let me know in the comments if you've grown a Lucky Tiger or Brad's Atomic Grape and what you think about them. I have Rosella as a darker red cherry tomato, and a bunch of red tomatoes, cherry/grape tomatoes, that are all new for me because I am on the hunt for my favorite red cherry tomato. And those consist of the A. Grappoli di Inverno, Sweetheart Cherry, Rice and Traub. I don't even know if I said that right, but hopefully I did. Juliet Rapunzel. So I am going to try those this year. And those are my trellises for the tomatoes. My determinants, I'm growing Destiny, Bella Rosa, Saucy Lady, Heinz 1350, and then I have Principe Borghese as a determinant cherry plant that I will also grow in my bush tomato section. Then in my back garden, I will put some of my colored tomatoes, so black Rumtula, black pineapple, brown sugar, pineapple, Thorburns, terracotta, and great white is what I'm going to grow. As well as my hot/seasoning peppers. So Greek pepperoncini, orange pepperoncini, red and purple cayenne, Papri Plus hybrid, and Arroz con Pollo, which is a seasoning pepper. Okay, and then I'm growing potatoes. I'm going to grow Silverton Russet, Adirondack Blue, and Amarose Fingerling. And I told my husband that part of how I made my decision was going with red, white, and blue. So I'm getting my red, white, and blue potatoes. And I figured my kids would love the russets the most because that would be easy to make French fries with. And we love the Adirondack Blue. And we've never had the Amarose fingerling, but I've had fingerling potatoes. We've grown them before. We love them. These are really pretty. And I like that there's red in it because that obviously gives you more nutrients. So I am going to grow those. And that is going in a whole bed, and this is going to be my first year growing them in ground. I normally grow them in tubs, but because I wanted such a high volume of potatoes, I decided that I would try the in-ground method. Okay, eggplants. I only have a small 1-row section for it. It's right here. It's not a wide row. I'm going to do Shira Maru, which is a green, a white knight. That one I've grown before. It's pretty easy to grow. It's a white eggplant. And then I'm going to grow long purple, which is a new one for me. I'm going to grow 2 of each of these eggplants because we don't need a ton of eggplant, but we do like to have it and it would taste delicious. If I don't grow it, then we're not going to get it. Okay, so sweet and mild peppers. And that is going to be here and here. We have 2 beds. So we have, as our bell or bigger peppers, is sweet chocolate, yellow monster, dough d'Espagne, Lesia, and orange Lesia. Our smaller snacking peppers would be Bounty Hybrid, which is my favorite banana plant, Key West Cubanelle, that is a new one that we're trying, Anaheim Chili, Pippin's Golden Honey, and Sheepnose Pimiento. We also over here have some roots and greens, and I'm really not going to know what I'm putting in there until it's pretty close. But there's plenty of space and quick turnaround. Some of the things can get harvested and replanted more than once in this year. This is the tomato garden. All right, now onto our 3 sisters garden. This is my grapes and onions section. This isn't going to change. Last year I did grapes and bush beans, onions, supposedly grapes and onions grow well together. You can give it a whirl. So these are the onions that I started growing in early January. We have yellow of Parma onion, and that is a sweet onion, as well as Isla Craig onion, and that is also a sweet onion. And we sowed in a lot more seeds, so there's a bunch of sprouts just coming through. Then we have red onion, superstar onion, which is a white onion, and Walla Walla sweet onions. Here I planted roses last year. So that kind of takes up half this fence line here. This is going to be my broccoli bed. And then look at these little cute baby sprouts. This was back in January, right after we had planted them, and very quickly they were sprouting. We did a lot of different varieties. I have Emerald, Imperial, Green Magic, DeSico, Sprouting Calabrese, Broccoli Rob, Broccoli Romanesco, Waltham, Sun King, Rasmus, and Gypsy. And the reason I do so many is because they all have different growing lengths. So it lets me be able to plant those 72 broccoli plants and not have to harvest 72 broccoli plants all at once. Some of them are going to be ready in a month of planting outside, and others could take up to 2 to 3 months. As the broccoli finishes, I will add my summer squash and corn. All right, so summer squashes and zucchinis that I want to grow. I'm not sure if which one I'm going to grow. I was actually thinking of trying the Ford Hook this year because I'm just not having good luck with green zucchini lately. I don't know if it's just the seasoning because years before I had no issues, and then the last couple years, 2 or 3 years, the weather's been kind of iffy and those just haven't been successful. I've tried like numerous different types of green ones, but I do always have success with all of these, and these are really flavorful. So if you're looking for different zucchini that's flavorful, then these might be the ones you like. Okay, so I'm going to do white patty pan and the Peter Pan patty pan. Go get Dad. Go scare Dad. Yeah, good idea.
Do you want me to tell you his reaction?
Yeah. Lemon squash. Long White of Palermo is one of my favorites, and this is my other favorite, is Rugoso Friulana. It's like a light zucchini, and it's just very flavorful. I really like it. If I end up with room to grow both of these, then I will, but I haven't really laid that out yet to kind of figure out if I'm going to have this space. I think I'm going to give them each 18 inches, so 1.5 feet. Summer squash. You made him laugh?
Yeah, he burst into laughter since he was in his room, so I had to do like this.
Oh, you had to be sneaky going in?
Yeah, and
like I
couldn't stop laughing.
This is going in a garden bed, but because I'm putting the corn in the back, I'm only going to do 1 row of summer squash. So I just put 25 foot long, like how I would do with my trellises, because it's just 1 row. That'll give it 2 feet to grow in one direction. Okay, so 25 feet. And then if it's 1.5, half of it would be 12.5, and then half of that is like 6.25. So 18 plants about. All right, now let's see what we have here, and that'll kind of help us decide how many we can grow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I choose 6, then I can grow 3 plants of each. I think because I have grown the white and greens every year, and I really don't need 6 of these plants, because I'm also going to have the lemon squash. And these are kind of, this one produces a white zucchini. I think being I've had so much bad luck with green ones, and I'm hoping for a good year, and I want to try these 2 different varieties. I think I'm going to do those in lieu of the white. And for that, I did decide that I'm going to try growing this Orchard Baby sweet corn. It's small. It's not big. It says 3 to 5 feet tall, bearing 2 ears of corn each. It's only 65 days. So that is really fast for corn. Now, I know these aren't going to be like huge corn. They're going to be small. It's going to be like, I guess, if you were to cut the corn in half, except you won't need to do that. So I'm really excited to see what this gives me. I figured once the broccoli clears out, if I do like 2 rows in the back of this bed, because they're small plants, they're not big plants, I think it'll be fine. And then do the squash and zucchini in front of it. So it would be like half corn, half summer squash, zucchini. And they grow well together, so I think that will work. And then I also have mini blue popcorn that I want to grow. And normally you can't grow multiple varieties of popcorn in the same area. They'll cross-pollinate, and then the seeds are actually the kernels. So if they cross-pollinate, what you'll get is a different type of popcorn or different type of corn than what you're expecting. However, these have majorly different growing lengths. So because this grows really fast and this grows longer, I'm going to be able to grow them both. Over here, I'm going to grow the blue popcorn, and then I'm going to put loofah at the end because it can kind of trellis. So here's our pool area. This is where our sitting area is, and then it's all fenced this way. So this loofah can grow along that back fence line of our pool, and that will be fantastic. We do not need to keep that fence clear in the back, so if it wants to sprawl along that fence line, that is totally okay with it. I decided to grow the Tahitian butternut because this is really successful. The bugs didn't bother it as much. It's a butternut type. It's still in my kitchen. I've been waiting to see like how long it lasts. It lasts really long. So I'm going to be cutting open into it soon. But it does last. So I want to grow more of that, and I'm going to do that right in this little section that I have. Okay. And then I have a trellis here that I'm going to grow green beans on. These green beans are going to be pole green beans. I'm not growing bush this year at all because the rabbits just love the bush beans and bowls too. So it has been a lot of work to try to keep those plants alive and giving me stuff. So instead, I'm going to just grow pole beans this year. Okay, my second bed here, for my next bed, in front of the trellis, is going to be celery and cucumbers. That's my next tackle. That is going into a bed that is 3 by 18. So we have plenty of room to pick some good cucumbers. 8 to 10 inches apart, so I'll just say 12 inches. Let's see, we have Bait Alpha, which is like a little snacking size cucumber. We really like those. The Suyo Long. I have not gotten a good amount from these yet, but they're so tasty that I keep growing them every year. They're not like they haven't been super abundant, and I think it's because of our weather. So hopefully they'll have a more abundance because they are for sure one of our favorites. Dar, chompers we grew last year, and that was really good. White Wonder and Armenian, which I absolutely love those two. And then we have Pickle Bush, Crispy Crunchy. And this was a free seed packet that I got, but it says it only has 5 seeds in it. There's not going to be a lot of plants for this. It is a cornicon type pickle, so it's a very small pickle that says crunchy. I do want to try that. Wisconsin SMR. I think if I put like a T-post here, some of them I can probably do on the T-post, and then I can do the other ones in the front. I think the Armenian, I don't think it minds the heat at all. So I think I'll actually might grow this in my watermelon section. I think getting this down to 6 would be ideal. My family really likes these Bait Alphas. We liked Chompers and White Wonder. We're gonna do the Suyo Longs. Pickle Bush. Dar. Alright, Armenian. I've heard that you can actually freeze this and it tastes really good in smoothies and as like almost an ice cream sorbet kind of thing. I feel like I can't go wrong with that one because it has options. And then here I'll have the rest of my brassicas. And then that'll switch over to watermelon. Last year, I grew a Moon and Stars watermelon. I got a ton of seeds out of it that I was able to share with some of you, so that was really fun. I don't have to dig into those seeds yet. I still have some left in here, but if I don't have enough, then I'm going to use my seeds from last year. I don't know if they'll grow true to themselves or be successful or not, but it's going to be fun to try and see. Now I'm just trying to see, I don't want really long growing season ones or really huge ones. Definitely growing Moon and Stars. And I'm trying to keep them like all a little bit different. My mapped out plans are just drafts. And I never end up with a final copy until it's all in the ground. But it's a good template for me for planning, and it's a good template to cause as little waste as possible with my plants. Okay, Moon and Stars. For sure, we will do Wilson Sweet, which I have not tried yet. Silver Yamato and Lee Lanu Sweet Glow. Okay, over here, my trellises are going to be beans. So here I'm going to grow Tiger's Eye shelling beans and Ozark cowpeas. Here I'm going to do the Red Ripper cowpeas. And I'm going to do some of my melons here. And I might put like a T-post trellis up there just to kind of grab hold of them and keep them off the ground a little bit more. I'm gonna grow smaller varieties for the one section, and those are going to include the Kajari, Canary Yellow, maybe Cicada Sweet. I keep getting torn on if I should do my watermelon and melon plants opposite, because the big watermelons are going to want to sprawl on the ground. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to change this real quick. So see, this is why it works out. It's constantly rearranging. So watermelons. The only thing is this is a smaller space, so I need to be more mindful of that. I'm going to say it's like 10 feet long. So I'm going to do 4 moon and stars and then 2 of each of the other ones. And I'm going to take the candy roaster out if I want it bad enough when planting time comes, then I can put it in the back garden. That's a 3 by 18. Okay. Decisions. I think I really have it narrowed down pretty well. Anything else can go in the back garden. I do have a pretty big back garden. So I'm definitely putting my overflow of tomatoes back there and my overflow of peppers. I wanted to try growing some of these pumpkins and this winter squash. I might try putting those in that back garden and growing them back there. Thanks for hanging out with me while I planned my 2025 food garden for my family of 5. It takes a bit of work to get started, but I enjoy most of it. I get very inspired during this time of year. And now I just can't wait for the warm weather to return when we can get our hands in the dirt, breathe in the fresh air, and feel the sun again. Until then, I will look forward to getting my garden ready and watching the birds eat outside. See you again soon. Bye.